boy, last thing I remember, we were at the Renfest.
This is definitely not a Renfest, but I'm not mad.
That's cool. It looks like we're in outer space.
Yeah.
So, fantasy and science fiction.
Fantasy and science fiction sounds good to me.
It's the best of both worlds.
Yes, it is.
All right. And we've got lots and lots of stuff to talk to you about today. This is Jessica and Cameron here at the Scott County Public Library in beautiful Georgetown, Kentucky. We've been transported into outer space. So we're going to talk to you about science fiction and fantasy today.
That's right. Yeah, I have a couple books here. Jessica has some books, and we're going to give you the spiel on those and do the old bookends thing.
Yes, we've got Far from the Light of Heaven. This was one of my favorite ones that I read. It's by Tade Thompson. And in this one, a woman signs on to a long-distance journey to transport some colonists to a far-off planet. And because the journey is so long, they're going to spend most of it in suspended animation. And so the ship is actually going to be piloted by an artificial intelligence, an AI captain, while they're sleeping. And she's the first mate. Her name's Shell. She's the first mate on the ship, and she is the human element to getting all of these colonists to their destination. Only something goes very, very wrong on the way to this new planet. And when she wakes up, the AI has been compromised, and some of the passengers have been murdered in their sleep. So it's kind of like a murder mystery in space. So she has to figure out who done it and why, or else, the whole rest of the ship is going to be toast.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That sounds really tense. And I just love the way that you can take the setting of sci-fi or the setting of a spaceship or whatever and tell all types of different stories with it.
Yeah.
The book I have here is Litany of the Long Sun, and it's actually two books. First, Nightside of the Long Sun, and the second one is Lake of the Long Sun. They're part of the Book of the Long Sun by Gene Wolfe, and I think they're just fantastic. They start, and you wouldn't know anything is sci-fi about it, just following this priest who is called a Patera and his Mantean, which is like a church and school put together, as he tries to save it from a crime lord. And the kind of decisions he makes throughout this first novel blow up. He makes these different moral decisions with a certain good thing in aim, and ends up not only getting involved with bigger things in the world, but literally figuring, or he doesn't figure it out, they know, but he ends up interacting with the gods of this world. And this world is called the Whirl, and it's actually a giant generational spaceship that's taking all of these many people through space, and has been for hundreds of years. And so it becomes a really big tale of war, but at the heart of it is this guy Patera Silk and this small church that he has, or this Mantean that he is trying to save at the end of the day. So it's really fascinating. Gene Wolfe is one of my favorite authors. This is the first half of the Book of the Long Sun, and it's available here at the Scott County Public Library.
That's really super cool.
Yeah.
All right, this was one of my absolute favorite books that I read this time. It's called The Icarus Plot, and it's by Timothy Zahn. He's an awesome author he's done a lot of Star Wars books as well. But what this book is about is kind of like a Guardians of the Galaxy sort of thing, except they're not superheroes. But there are a couple of people. The guy is a human, and the woman is of an alien race. But they've joined together. They used to be bounty hunters. Mm-hmm. And they got into some trouble bounty hunting, and the guy lost his left arm. And so they're trying to eke out an existence as trailblazers, which are people that are hired by companies to go out in search of worlds that they can colonize, or that they can become commercial ventures. So the woman, Celine, has a very acute sense of smell, and they always use that. They used it when they were bounty hunting, and they used it when they're trailblazing now. And so they are hired by a couple of shady characters to go hunt for a woman who had been involved in something called the Icarus Plot, which they thought was a new kind of sort of a warp drive to get spaceships faster through space. But it turns out it's kind of like a hole in space that people can be transported through, kind of like a black hole or portal. And anyways, they get mixed up in all kinds of craziness and have to save pretty much their own lives and the lives of their friends. And
Is that a raptor? Is a raptor a member of this crew?
He's not a member of the crew,
Okay.
but he's a member of the race of beings that has a lock on the shipping in this universe. So this race of beings doesn't want anyone else to be able to ship anything faster than they can or better than they can. So they want this Icarus device, and they're willing to go to great lengths to get it.
It sounds like Amazon. Like
Yeah.
if Amazon is going to turn into their own race,
That would be it.
Yeah, it's going to be that.
That
And
would
also,
be it.
the way you described it kind of reminds me of a little bit, like you said, Guardians of the Galaxy, but I feel some Firefly in there too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, there's some Firefly in
Sounds
here. And one of the things I really liked about this book is that it showed the main character, who's a man, and his partner, the woman, they're platonic friends.
Oh yeah.
And
You
they
don't get
maintain
that
this, they maintain this they're really super close, but they're platonic friends. And the other thing is, when they go into a cantina or something like that, they drink soft drinks.
Oh, nice.
And I think it's awesome.
I've always
So,
had this idea of a joke of like drinking beers with a bendy straw. And I think the idea of going into a cantina and drinking soft drinks is the same sort of discord there.
Yeah.
Where you have this expectation that's broken.
that's what I would do. I love soft drinks. So,
Awesome.
so there we go.
All right. So I don't have anything too much like that one, but I do have, and maybe someone else has talked about this because it's an awesome book that I think won the Hugo Award in K. Jemison's The Fifth Season.
Yes.
You've read that?
I've read part of this series, yes.
Yeah, so this is the first one, and it's very much an introductory one, but the story is still really full and rich. And in this world, just like ours, there are 4 seasons, but the 5th season is always big and cataclysmic and changes everything. And a lot of the people that are blamed for it and are they're very powerful, but they also are very they're mistreated. They're called origins, and I didn't listen to the audiobook, so I might have butchered that word. But if you've watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, they're like earthbenders. Mm-hmm. They basically can control tectonic activity. And the protagonists in this book are 3 of those people, and at 3 different ages, and
Yes.
we kind of, through them, get to see the 3 women, we get to see these 3 characters deal with this idea of being an origin at different stages. One of them is an adult who is kind of in hiding. One of them is more middle-aged, and they're going with a very, very powerful origin on their own journey. They're working almost for the state, and so they're going to take care of this activity. And things happen, as hopefully in a book they tend to. And the other one is a young child who is learning that they have these abilities and being sent to learn how to control their abilities and work for the state. And there's just so much meat. That type of ability has shades of fantasy. Anytime it's just like an innate ability, you think wizards or, like I said, earthbenders. But this is pretty firmly rooted in sort of like this cybernetic tradition of storytelling. I remember reading in K. Jemison's her Twitter, and she mentions that in the later parts of this series, there's a city they find, and people were having trouble understanding what that city might look like. And she was like, oh, you can, reference, this sort of book. That's what I was going for. And I think she does a great job of kind of putting together her own story and these themes of being an outsider and these themes of trying to find yourself and put it together with this history of this cyber kind of sci-fi history, like not like actual history, but the history of the genre, and tell a devastatingly powerful story throughout the 3 books. This is the introductory novel, and it's great. And I, if you like this, I would recommend the other 2 as well. But you said you've read this one?
I read that one, yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool.
Excellent. Yeah. The people that have this ability, when they're young, they can't control it. And so I think the reason it's so feared by everybody else is because people can die,
Oh yeah,
through these cataclysms.
And they're a cast of people. There's a cast as well that are called the Guardians, who basically are their caretakers, but also, are physically in charge of them. They have power. They have their own set of powers for which they have stigmas surrounding those powers, negative ones.
Yeah.
But they're the ones that keep the Origines in check. So it's really interesting. It's the whole entire society of it is well thought out, and it's also relevant. I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really enjoyed that book, and I really felt like I was involved in the story, and the world was real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's very cool. Okay. My next one is called All Our Hidden Gifts by Caroline O'Donoghue. And it's about, I saw the picture and I thought, oh, this is like Harry Potter, because she's wearing kind of like a school uniform. And it is kind of like Harry Potter in a way. She is in Ireland, and she attends what we would call a private girls' school. And she has had a long-term friendship with a girl named Lily, who's, the way she's described, she sounds almost like maybe she might be autistic, but she's got some social awkwardness, and she's very nerdy. She likes to draw and just does things sometimes socially inappropriately, but she's a very brilliant young woman. But Maeve, when she joins the private school with Lily, she's embarrassed by Lily, and she wants to cultivate a different set of friendships and become popular. So she starts being really mean to Lily. And it culminates in after Maeve finds a set of tarot cards and starts doing readings for everybody in the school. Her nastiness towards Lily comes to a head, and she unfortunately enacts some kind of spell with these tarot cards, with an unusual tarot card called the Housekeeper, that she says something like, "I wish, Lily, that you'd never existed," and so Lily is gone, disappears. And so the whole rest of the book is Maeve feeling remorse over this and having to try to get her best friend back. And she joins forces with Lily's sibling and with another young woman that she meets who isn't among the popular kids. And they have to work spells in order to get Lily to come back.
So is she the only one that remembers Lily, or do they remember her and she just ceased to?
Oh no, they remember her.
Okay.
She just ceases to exist. So everyone's parents are, they're frightened, and the police are involved, and
that's Maeve on the front right there.
This is Maeve, yes.
Okay.
This is Maeve, and there is a sequel to it. So should I tell you that things do turn out in the end, but because there is a sequel. So, but I recommend this. It's not quite Harry Potter, but yeah, there's some magic going on, and definitely. So
seems like more like rooted. Like one thing that I've always heard a critique of Harry Potter is that the magic doesn't really have any cost, and that definitely seems like there's a cost to the magic.
There's definitely a cost. There's definitely a cost to the magic here, and this one you'll find it in our young adult section. So, Caroline O'Donoghue's All Our Hidden Gifts. Learn how to control your magic.
Right, so next up, this is gonna be my last sort of sci-fi one, but I'm using it kind of as a transition as we're on this ship because it's a mix, in my opinion, of sci-fi and fantasy. It's a comic book, a manga actually, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and it's one of the more beautiful comic books I've ever read, or manga in general. It was actually a movie as well, made by Hayao Miyazaki, who, if you are familiar with Studio Ghibli, most of their most beloved films are made by him. Yeah. And this tells the story of the girl Nausicaa, who is a princess of a small kingdom in a world that is much like kind of what you're getting in the 5th season, and in some fashions with Litany of the Long Sun as well. It's a post-cataclysmic world where the conditions of the world are thanks to decisions people had to make because we destroyed the world, which, again, is pretty relevant. But what this world has is not only this condition, which are these poisonous forests, which exist for a purpose. They're not just poisonous forests that are naturally there. They were created for a particular purpose. But these giant bug armored creatures called Nomu. And if you can see the armor that a lot of the characters wear, it's actually crafted from fallen parts from these Omu. And Nausicaa is one of the few characters in this story who not only wants to foster kind of a sense of peace through the different kingdoms, but also with the Omu, who everybody's kind of manipulating each other. And she's not only willing to ask those hard questions, but put her body on the line and do all types of things for the end goal of creating a more, perfect world. She's a very, very strong character. She's very much Messiah-like in ways, which is, really interesting coming from Hayao Miyazaki, who I think a lot of his characters aren't so much Messiah-like, and so she stands out. But I think there are at least like 6 volumes of this. I'm actually still working through all of the volumes. If you watch the movie, you can get a good sense of a big portion of the story. But if the art is fantastic. What you see on here is about what it looks like paneled in this manga. And I just think there's a lot of hope to this, but there's also a lot of realism. And I think you get that with a lot of Miyazaki stories, that there are not easy answers to these environmental questions because it was too easy to create the issues. When you create an issue where there's a giant poisonous forest, you were taking the easy route for too long anyway. So I recommend this book heartily. If you want sci-fi, there's a little bit of sci-fi in there. There are old ancient machines that might be slumbering, that might be woken up. If you want some fantasy, there's just a little bit of what you might call magic there, and giant beasts and creatures and gliding kind of mount things, and it's a well-told story.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see the movie, but now that I see that we've got the manga, I'd like to look into that. And this is in our adult manga?
This is, yes, in our just adult comic section. It's in black and white, so something to get used to if you're used to American comics. But I think it's pretty readable and just pretty fantastic overall. And it's you like Miyazaki, it's very much reminiscent of his other work.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I love Miyazaki.
Awesome.
All right, now just some down-home fun. I delved into the adult graphic novels too,
nice.
And this is the Adventure Zone. Here there be gerblins, and it's about it's about a dungeon master sending his 3 players out on an adventure, and one of them's a human warrior, and the other one's a dwarf healer, and the third one is an elvish wizard. And so what do they get into? All kinds of craziness. And of course the dungeon master is making snarky comments all the way through it. So, they get into just crazy misadventures, and how do they get out of that? And how do they get out of that? Well, It's just pretty funny. So if you just want rip-roaring, comedic adventure story, here's your book.
Awesome.
Here's your
So
book.
the D20 is kind of matching.
D20,
This
yes.
one I have here. Very
There you
powerful.
go. Very powerful,
Yeah,
yes.
Very powerful.
So I do recommend that if you just want some light reading just for fun,
Right.
take this one. Definitely.
I'll have to look up that one.
Yeah.
I just love the whole kind of tabletop games
Mhm.
scene. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So my next three ones are all from the same author. We're moving on to pure fantasy. Brandon Sanderson has just been, especially since the pandemic, I've read so much of his works. Before it as well, but if you don't know about his world, it's called the Cosmere, and through certain means that I'm not going to spoil, most of the worlds in this entire, like, I don't know if it's a galaxy or just this whole universe, have some type of magic system going on in them. And in this story, Warbreaker, which I listened to the audiobook a couple years back, but I'm actually reading through it right now, the magic system is based on what's called breath. And everybody's born with a breath, but you can give that breath away and become a drab, which is basically just, kind of a... it's hard to, I don't really know. They can't, for instance, feel other people around them. Like certain things that we might call intuition are called breath in this novel. But because they can give them away, there are people in this novel with hundreds, if not thousands of breaths who have really powerful abilities. Some of them just use those breaths for things like, for instance, color. If they were looking at this wall in front of us, they would see every single shade of blue within the wall, as opposed to just seeing blue. They can have perfect pitch. They know every single pitch just automatically in their brain when they hear someone talking or singing. And they can do something called awakening, which is I could take some of my breath, put them in this cape I'm wearing, and command that cape to do things. And so that's kind of the basis of the power system, but there's also these people called the Returned. And they are people who have passed away, but are returned for one purpose or another. And so they can live an entire week, but they need another breath in order to live beyond that week. And all of those kind of factors come to play when this one princess was supposed to be sent to the land of the returned, the land of the awakeners. And their religion is anti all of this. They live and they don't hate colors, but they see colors and putting yourself in all these different colors as arrogant. And so they wear gray and they wear brown and they're really austere and all of these things. But they send their princess away for the sake of peace. But the one princess they were supposed to send, her father, the king, was like, I love you a bit too much. We need you here at home. And so he sends his younger daughter instead. And she has to go and live with this god king who is full of tens of thousands of breath and sire a child with him. And so that's the basis of the story. The other main characters are this other princess who decides, I'm not going to leave my sister here with this guy doing what I've been waiting 20 years my entire life to do. And one of the returned. And in this country where all of this is taking place, the returned are treated as gods because they have the ability to, for instance, if there's a young child who has a deadly disease, they could give away their breath to heal that child because they don't get diseased or anything. And so they're treated as gods because of that potential and because of other things. And the story is called Warbreaker because they also have powers. For instance, they can prophesy, and there are all of these returned are constantly prophesying a war that's going to come up. So Warbreaker, kind of the title is really a spoiler in some ways. Not a spoiler, but if you know what the title means, then you know a huge part of the story, so I can't give that away. But I can say figuring out what Warbreaker means is one of the great moments in the novel, one of the great moments in the Cosmere. And this is a really good introduction to the Cosmere because it's a story that you don't need to know any of his other works to get. It's a story that works completely standalone, but if you enjoy it, you're gonna, I think, for the most part, if you like Warbreaker, you're gonna like his other stuff because there are certain principles Brandon Sanderson sticks to. Have you read any of his books?
I don't think I have, no.
So yeah, he's not for everybody. He is very much telling stories. He is not trying to have the most flowery prose. And he said it. He actually has a podcast called Writing Excuses, and so he's really forthcoming with his whole writing process. But if you just want stories upon stories with really good emotional hooks, he does a great job.
Well, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to bring up a few of the latest new releases. I didn't get a chance to go all the way through these, but I'm going to bring them to your attention because they're brand new, and we just got them here at the Scott County Public Library. This is Daughter of Redwinter by Ed McDonald. And this woman on the cover, she can hear dead people, and she can see them. And this is not a good thing in her society. So anyone that is found to have these abilities is just put to death. It says on the tagline on the cover says, "Those who see the dead soon join them." So she's being hunted because of this ability, and she ends up at kind of like a school where she's learning how to control her abilities too. And so you might want to check that out. It's a new release. Shards of Earth. This is a brand new one by Adrian Tchaikovsky. If you like stuff like the video game Halo, or if you play Warhammer 40K, this is a good book for you because it's in the future. There is only war, basically. It's about cybernetic humans. They have cybernetic parts that make them stronger and better and faster and better able to fight. And they're fighting against an unknown alien entity that has come through space that they call the Architect. They don't even know what this alien's name is. They don't know what race they are or where they come from or anything. They just call them the Architect because what this alien race does is they arrive at a planet and they basically turn that planet inside out and make it into some kind of artistic thing for what purpose, nobody knows. So Earth has been destroyed at this point. That's why this is called Shards of Earth. And they're trying to stop the Architect from doing this to all everywhere across the galaxy.
Now, is this a standalone novel, or is it going to have sequels?
It's going to have sequels.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to have sequels. So, Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky.
Awesome.
Also, a Dungeons and Dragons novel.
Nice.
Dragons of Deceit, brand new, by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. In this one, a woman has to, she feels compelled to find an artifact that will transport her back in time so she can prevent the death of her father. And that's what her quest is about. And so if you like Dungeons and Dragons, check this one out. All right, talk about returns. Talk about returns. This one is called Reboots, Undead Can Dance. It's got a zombie on the cover. Apparently, these long space voyages, where most humans would have to spend in, slumber, they'd have to be put under and put, frozen cryogenically or something, so that they would have some lifespan still at the end of their voyage. Apparently, they figured out that zombies, vampires, and werewolves are undead, so they have unlimited lifespan. So they pilot these ships with them.
Oh God.
And I'm assuming that most of this is a comedy. I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read like a chapter in, and it is pretty funny. Like the dialogue is really funny. It's basically vampires, werewolves, and zombies in space. So you can't go wrong.
That's proof of the power of a cover, because the
Yes.
more I look at it, the more interested I
You
am.
want to read? It's by Mercedes Lackey and Cody Martin, and it's brand new at the Scott County Public Library. Okay, there's one more thing that I want to talk about. Just one more book. Well, actually, a couple more books. So I wanted to mention that we have all kinds of role-playing games here. They're in the teen area and the young adult area. This happens to be the rule book for a game called Starfinder. but we've got Dungeons and Dragons, and we've got, I think we've got
Pathfinder.
Pathfinder too, yeah, so which is the more fantasy one. But yeah, we've got them here at the Scott County Public Library. And there's just one more thing. I think it's down here now. No, it's not.
Is it under Andy Weir?
Yeah, Andy Weir. We can't have science fiction without talking about Andy Weir. If you haven't read The Martian yet, you need to read it. It's very, very, very realistic science fiction, and it's one of my favorite books. But what I really want to talk about is his book Artemis, because this is one of my absolute favorite books. So it's a woman that's the main character, and instead of she's alone in space, like his other two books have a male protagonist, and they're pretty much alone in space, and they have to use their scientific knowledge and their own personal abilities to get through their situation. Well, she has found she's put herself into very bad situations because she's made very bad decisions in her lifetime, and she lives in a moon colony, the only colony on the moon, called Artemis. And she gets involved in a criminal kind of syndicate kind of a thing, and she ends up having to, in the end, actually save the whole colony. But there's a whole lot of science involved, and there are a lot of characters, and I'm happy to say that almost every single character in this entire book is some kind of a minority. So we've got everybody in here except white men. So I love this book. This is the greatest book. So read it, Artemis by Andy Weir. All right. I think we've talked about everything there is to talk about. Until next time.
Until
What do you
next
think?
time.